Well, it's super great and thrilling to be here. I think Bitcoin might be making it to 8,000 during consensus this year, and I think the people have put this whole event together and the program done a super job, and Masari and all, I'm a big fan. So I think this is just fantastic to see all this stuff happening. It's just overwhelming. I'm here to speak briefly about Elixxir, and I think the key thing to understand about Elixxir is that we have solved the metadata problem, and we are unique in being able to do that in the blockchain space because of our breakthrough technology. So, what is metadata an important problem to solve? I think it's the whole game. Look at Facebook. The public is warming up to the idea that it's not, that end-to-end encryption of messages is a kind of diversion from the real issue. If you read Zuckerberg's essay on privacy, you see that he says, well, we'll keep the metadata to protect the users from spam. But no one seems to be buying that. So this is really the key issue, and privacy is, of course, a very important central aspect of all kinds of financial transactions, markets, consumer interaction, etc. So think of Elixxir as the solution in the blockchain space for transaction privacy in real time. And just to make it quite crystal clear, there are just simply two issues in privacy. It's the end-to-end encryption of message content, which has been widely provided. No one seems to really care in government because everyone in the intelligence world knows that the real useful information and the information that people are making money off of, like Facebook and Google, is the metadata. It's everything else. Who you talk to and when. So let's look at this in more depth. So end-to-end encryption of message content is just the payload. People can speak in code. They might be trying to mislead others. There's not that much, and it's very expensive to try to glean information from it. So that's not a very interesting target. But everything else is tremendously useful. The whole social graph, who talks to who and when, who all your friends are, what times messages are sent, how much communication between parties, where you are when you're at each moment in time, where you are when you're communicating with whom, and who's there as well. So there's tremendous wealth of data there, and now there is a technology out there to mine this and figure out just about everything. Like Eric Schmidt said, we can predict what you're going to ask before you even know it yourself. That's based on the metadata. So providing transaction metadata protection in the blockchain space, that's what Elixxir can do. And the reason only we can do it is because of our unique technology, which is a tremendous breakthrough in encryption. It is 1,000x speed up over what I proposed in the early 80s, and no one else actually sped it up since then, even though over 5,000 articles referenced my original article on mixing from 82. So I'm going to show you a short video that gives the essence of metadata protection, and then I'm going to turn over to Stephanie, our CFO, to tell you about what's happening more recently.
Suppose Alice wants to send a message to Bob, but she doesn't want anyone to know that the two of them are communicating. Message content can easily be protected by so-called end-to-end encryption, but this does not protect the information about who's talking to whom and when, the metadata, which is increasingly recognized as far more revealing and more challenging to protect. Each member of a team of nodes, in order to protect the metadata, successively shuffles the batch of encrypted messages using its container of secretly arranged tubes and sending the messages without delay through to the next team member. Even just a single node can keep senders from being linked to recipients. Alice also gets a receipt informing her confidentially that her message was provided to Bob. Team members then destroy their secret pattern of tubes, making way for a new team ready for a new batch. Earlier, each node is chosen independently as a kind of random secret key, which input tube to connect to which output tube. Elixxir's breakthrough over the type of messaging I open sourced in the 80s is a way that enables almost all the work to be done well in advance, yielding the only known way to provide real-time metadata protection smartphone to smartphone. Lead can also pay Yumi by sending what appears to be an ordinary message, but that actually contains numbers that serve like metal coins and paper money. Called such denominated unforgeable numbers digital cash, first issued by DigiCash in the 90s. Elixxir's breakthrough improvement on the original digital cash now makes it fully distributed and quantum resistant. Elixxir thus is able to uniquely provide a new, ultimate metadata level protection of confidentiality in all your online communications and payments. For the first time, giving you a protected sphere, protecting your digital world today and your digital future.
So thanks very much for all your support. So I think you see the essence of this is we can do WeChat with blockchain inside, the proven killer app, but with the metadata protection and all the other benefits of blockchain like immutability and censorship resistance. So now I'd like to turn over to Stephanie Vaughan, our CFO, and she'll take it from there. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to run. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Okay, so the CMix that David just described and talked about is actually running right now in our internal AlphaNet, and it's live. So you can come down to our booth after this, and you can see those messages that David said, like being sent from one person to another, and it protecting all the metadata. It's running on 3 different cloud service providers, and you can see the nodes right there. And the next stage from the AlphaNet is our BetaNet, and we're well on our way to collecting different applications and having different people run these BetaNet nodes. So we have 870 applications collected from all around the world. You can see the different locations and then how many people applied from the different locations up on this map. And this is a little bit more about our node process, so like this open and transparent process. So we selected these we had 870 people apply, and now we publish these applications on our site to keep us accountable and to allow like everybody in the community to view the applications and to comment on them. So Peter Somerville, who's on our team, will also be available. Like if you have any questions specifically about nodes, and he's helping run that process. And now I'd like to introduce Elixxir. So Elixxir is an application that we developed in order to have people access the AlphaNet, the external AlphaNet, which Ben will talk a little bit more about in a second. So let me just play this video. So you can download Elixxir and then join the access list to run the external AlphaNet, which Ben will describe a little bit more about. But you can download it on iOS and on Android, and you can visit us on our site. Thank you.
So I assume you're wondering why you would want to download Elixxir. And it's because in July, just about 2 months away, we're going to be launching our AlphaNet. Now, this AlphaNet is going to be a small-scale test of our network, but small is a relative term. We can handle thousands and thousands of users and give them all the anonymity that they expect. So what we're capable of doing is, one sec, sorry. This will provide low latency, anonymous communication, and best-in-class end-to-end encryption, which we're going to have a white paper out before the launch. And we're going to have 2 ways for you to participate. So there's going to be the messenger, which will be released on across all mobile platforms. And you can try right now at our booth, which is on the 3rd floor. And the other thing that we're going to have is a CMix developer program. So it's really, this isn't just a messenger. It's actually a communications network that any data can be sent over. And so we are providing an API which will allow any developer to integrate into any app, server, or structure to use our messaging network. We're going to have applications open for this May 1st. At this period of time for the AlphaNet, it'll only be available to those who apply. But as we'll get to in a second, open source and full decentralization is right around the corner. So this is a little diagram of what the network actually will look like for the AlphaNet. Obviously, it's high level, but essentially an app, it could be our messenger or anything that one of you develop, connecting to the client library, which is an easy-to-use portable system, which will then connect to our network, which is made up of 8 partner nodes. These are independent, not run by us. We do not have access to their internals, which is critical for our security system. And they together create a mixed network. Each one in front of it has what we call a gateway, which is their individual mechanism for securing against attacks like DDoS, and where they store received and sent messages for access at a later date. These gateways would run on the cloud using autoscalers and provide a significant level of tolerance to the nodes. Now, this AlphaNet is just the current stage in the process, this public AlphaNet, I mean. It's going to launch in July, and then by October, our BetaNet, which we are having, sorry, not October, but Q4, our BetaNet, which we are currently selecting nodes for, will go live. That will be substantially more performant, and it will be run by the community selected through the process that Stephanie discussed earlier. These nodes are going to run the system for a while until we launch mainnet, which will launch with our governance system, which we will detail more in the future, and will be a fully decentralized and unpermissioned network. The Q4 BetaNet release will include a full open source of our software, so that's pretty important. So I just want to give you a peek into the future of the mainnet. So a long-term goal of ours is to be able to run dApps, and we've got a pretty unique approach to it. Using the same client library, we're going to enable an individual to write an app which can connect to what we call dApp engines running within our system. And unlike more traditional dApp systems, code is not executed across the entire cloud. Instead, CMix can actually be used to select anonymously and randomly a set of executors in such a manner where the person running the dApp doesn't know which machines are executing it. The executors don't know how many others or which other machines are executing the same dApp. And then it is able to be confirmed by the network and added to the blockchain. This adds substantially more flexibility to how the system is executed while maintaining very similar security properties to extant dApp systems. So using one of our dApp engines will be far more similar to using a server within AWS or Google Cloud than it is the current experience. We're very excited, but it's a little bit off in the future. So that's our presentation.
A couple questions, couple technical questions, and then a question about how y'all are thinking about launch. But I mean, the first one top of mind is when you think about the privacy set for Elixxir, and you think about how you're doing end-to-end encryption, how that compares to everything else in the market today, things like what people are building on short signatures on Bitcoin, Zcash, Monero, all of these, how do you think they compare, and what are the kind of pros and cons of what you're doing versus what's out there today?
The properties are identical. Privacy is a very intricate thing, but our privacy properties are very similar, but are substantially cheaper to achieve. And we can protect metadata in a way that many of these systems can't. So when you submit a transaction to many of these, it is known that you're submitting a transaction. In our system, we block even knowledge of that, because the system handles messaging, transaction, and data from any DApp or app that is running through the network.
And what is the trade-off in that you're making to have that extra level of privacy?
We have a new approach to doing it, so the trade-offs are far more minimal than you'd expect.
So because of David's, so David invented, he said, the mixed technology in the 80s. So we found a way to speed up the mixed technology so we don't have to trade off with speed like a lot of other platforms do. And the way to speed up is having all the nodes, as he showed, do the pre-computation.
And even past you have the node applications now for the AlphaNet and the BetaNet. How is that going to work once you go to mainnet? Is it going to be still an approved node process, or is it going to be an open source kind of turn it on and go?
It will be more like open source turn on and go. The current process exists because it's a somewhat complicated network, and we need to ramp up in stages that are more isolated to ensure different components work. By the time we get to mainnet, it will be fully unpermissioned.
And so can you talk a little bit about how you're thinking about how you're pushing this setup, right? Going from a centralized component to pushing it to decentralized, right? You see a lot of blockchains that just turn on decentralization and let it run, right? And your Elixxir is kind of taking this handhold approach, saying we're going to slowly walk this out to market, slowly decentralize it. Can you walk us through how you thought about that and how you thought about that process and what you've learned kind of by looking at what the market has given you in historical comps?
So I want to first make a statement, which is, while the initial network is certainly not as decentralized as, say, Bitcoin, it's not fully centralized either. We don't control any component of the network. That being said, it certainly is more centralized than most out there, at least for the AlphaNet. A big part of it is that it's a layered system, and the mixnet itself is highly complex, which is why...
Can you explain what you mean by layered system?
I guess we think about it to more directly answer your question. Like, we put out this open and transparent process for our BetaNet nodes that you could read about. Like, we opened that in January, and like we publish all of our applications for the people who are running the BetaNet nodes, and that's just the applications for those that applied. So we try to make it open and as transparent and as fair as possible, so that we're not like allowing people in just to, because they're favorable to us in our system.
But your question, I assume, still stands.
Right. Like, how do you think about the process of getting towards decentralization?
So we're going to have and I can't talk about details on it, we're going to have an event where the network is opened up and people can join through the same mechanisms that you see with other systems. And that event will be when some components of the system are finalized and come online. Until then, the network is a little bit more brittle. And so it's important that as we're testing subsets of the system, we can maintain its functionality.
And so when you get to mainnet launch, like it's supposed to be a payment rails, what are you hoping for the initial use cases are, right? The initial business partners, the initial platforms. When you launch, what are you kind of hoping to see in the market building on top and using the Elixxir
So I think we're faster and like more scalable for our network, and then we're able to provide like metadata protection for any business like transaction, any message like API has been described like for our dApps. So really anybody that wants a transaction or like a lot of fast transactions on the blockchain that need to be completely anonymous, and like the next level of being anonymous with no metadata at all, not just end-to-end encryption. So I think there's a huge use case for that.
Did you want to expand?
Just that we could look and see there's many industries where privacy is critical, and these things tend to break down where the group providing the privacy fails. And part of that is that it's possible for these organizations to become very insular. They're not responsible to external parties, and this is a system which will be open source and will be responsible to external parties. So we believe that those groups that really need the privacy of their data, which there are many, will flock to our system.
And is there, when you look at the ecosystem today, is there any, like, are there any specific learnings that you've taken at Elixxir? You said, like, pointing to, like, things you've learned from, maybe it's Zcash, maybe it's Bitcoin, maybe it's someone else, and you say, we've learned from that and we want to change that people can learn from you as well?
I mean, one thing we've learned is that you can't gimp on decentralization. It's not an all or nothing game, but it's pretty close to it. It's very important to us that as we move forward, that we play that game right, and that we make it very clear what our plans are. And decentralization isn't just about the software, it isn't just about the nodes, it's about an entire ecosystem which no one has undue control over. And we've seen group after group fail due to saying, oh, we can grab this piece, we can grab this piece, and the answer really is no.
Yeah. So I mean, on that, other than node operators, while you're at Consensus, who are you trying to talk to the most? So what is the piece of the ecosystem that you're trying to focus on in the immediate future?
I mean, we're trying to talk to everybody here and have them download Elixxir, and then Elixxir will allow everybody in the whole community to test, like, the external AlphaNet that's coming out in a couple months. Like, we like everybody to test our network and see, like, if this is truly, like, protecting the metadata, and then them to see, like, the messages going back and forth between, like, other people, which you can view at our booth. So, I mean, the node process is to one group, yes, but, like, we like to reach everybody. And, like, unlike, like, maybe other blockchains, like, we are actually allowing people to test, like, on our AlphaNet, the actual transactions, like, through this messenger. Like, they don't have to have, like, an enterprise or a dApp company. Anybody can test it.
It's also quite important for us to get access and talk to developers who may use our system. You know, creating an API is as much an art as it is a science. And you can think you've got it right, and chances are you've got it wrong. So it's really important to us to find people who can review what we've got, test what we've got, and can really give us their input as to what makes it hard for them.
Yep. And so where can people find you throughout the week?
So we have a booth on the 3rd floor right near the entrance, and we'll be there all week.
Okay, awesome. Elixxir, thank you all for taking the time.